US President Joe Biden works to reassure voters and members of his party after a disappointing debate. And a New York judge delays the sentencing for Donald Trump in his hush money case after a landmark US Supreme Court decision. We'll discuss what it all means for the 2024 presidential election. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu and this is The Heat. US President Joe Biden is speaking with Democratic governors at the White House in an effort to reassure his party that he can win the November election. Biden is facing mounting pressure after a disappointing performance in last week's debate with former President Donald Trump. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters on Wednesday that President Biden is absolutely not dropping out of the race.
The president is clear-eyed, and he is staying in the race. I don't have anything else beyond that. He's staying in the race. That is what the president is promised to do. That is what he wants to continue to work on the successes that he's had. His record is unprecedented record, and that is what the president is focused on.
Well, for more now on the race for the White House, let's bring in our panel. Joining us from Florida is Eric Bolling. He's the host of the Eric Bolling podcast and the author of Wake Up America and The Swamp. Also with us from Virginia, John Fishwick Jr. is a former U.S. attorney for the Western District of Virginia. From Maryland, Joseph Williams is a former senior editor with U.S. News and World Report. And Joel Rubin is a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary for House Affairs. He joins us from Maryland as well. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Joel, let me start with you. The Biden campaign is scrambling right now to shore up support for President Biden. That was after his shaky performance in that debate. He is meeting Democratic governors, as I say. He's been holding meetings with top Democratic Party officials. I understand that the Vice President will also be at that meeting with Democrat governors. Question is, can he assure the Democratic base that despite all these questions about his mental health, about his age, that he's the man to take on Donald Trump in November and win?
Anand, it's great to be with you and with my colleague guests here. Look, without a doubt, Joe Biden is the candidate. Look, we're the Democratic Party. We're the party that stands for elections that are free and fair. Joe Biden won the primaries. We're not the party that throws out votes because we don't like the results of the election. That's the Republican Party. So Joe Biden, he has a mandate from the voters. He's going to get into this nomination period, get through this hard moment. He's going to have the backing of the party. Democrats, broadly speaking, love the agenda that he has for term 2 and are very supportive of all the significant accomplishments that he's had over the last 3.5 years. So I'll tell you, 90 rough minutes should not eviscerate 3.5 years of significant accomplishments. And I think we're going to see that come around when he gets through this rough period.
Yeah, the thing is, Joel, that as you say, he may have the agenda, he may have the support of some members of the Democrat Party, but there are questions over whether he can win because the polling looks like he won't win.
Yeah, look, Anand, you're right. There are going to always be questions. I mean, there are questions heading into the debate. Can he win? Can Democrats win? Can Joe Biden pull it out? I'm old enough to remember not too long ago when Joe Biden was counted out in 2020, was fifth looking backwards in the primaries, and then he turned it on. And I remember in 2022 when Democrats, we were going to get shellacked in the midterms, and then it turns out there was no red wave. It was a red trickle. So there are going to be moments like this. Joe Biden's used to this. The polls are not convincing, A, that he is that far behind, and B, that there's some special alternative that is out there that outpolls him. The only Democrat more popular than him in recent polling would be Barack Obama to run again, and that can't happen. So I think this is the nominee.
Joseph Williams, there are some senior Democrats like Nancy Pelosi who say, look, you know, after that debate performance, there is a valid question to be asked, and that question is, was it just an episode or part of a condition on the part of the president? On Tuesday, the Texas Congressman Lloyd Doggett became the first Democrat in Congress to call for Biden to drop out of the race. Let's listen to what he had to say.
This is not about one night. This has been a problem for a year that our nominee has been lagging behind our strong Senate candidates in half a dozen key states. No sign of significant improvement. And now we have the great disappointment of this debate where the president did not look good, did not refute the many lies of President Trump, and did not really do a good job of promoting the many accomplishments. So I salute President Biden. I just feel that it's time for him to step aside.
So, Judge, the question now being asked is, should Biden step aside? Should Democrats be taking a chance with him? And if we look at just another number here, 75% of Democrats say they would have a better shot at winning the White House again without Biden.
Well, it sort of reminds me of if you're in a car and you're driving through the desert and you pass by a sign that says next exit 38 miles, and all of a sudden you notice smoke coming from under the hood. You're really at a perilous moment where you don't really know whether or not to continue going forward or to pull over the side of the road and maybe see if you can seek some help. The problem for the Democrats here is that this has been a trickle. Doggett, Raul Grijalva, they have been a trickle. What has to happen is Biden has to have an outstanding performance with George Stephanopoulos on Friday. All of his chips are on that one number, at least for right now. He's got an opportunity to turn things around. I've said it before in this program that in politics, 4 months is a lot of time and no time at all. A, there is time for him to turn it around, but he's got to do it swiftly. He's got to do it convincingly. And B, there's very little time to choose a replacement nominee and have it go into the convention and have that person set up an apparatus, set up a campaign in order to convince people that he or she can beat Donald Trump. And I should say at this point that it is obvious that Trump is a weakened candidate. He is not a strong candidate. He is beatable. But the question is, who can do it? Can Joe Biden convince enough people with his interview with George Stephanopoulos and enough people on campaign rallies that he is the guy, that he still is the guy, and that he still has a fastball left in his arsenal?
Right, that reference to George Stephanopoulos is a reference to an interview that the president is doing with the American network ABC News, which will be broadcast this weekend. Eric, what is your view on this? I mean, there was a snap poll that was done by CNN after the debate, which showed Trump won the debate by a margin of 2-1, 67 to 33. And Republicans have also seized on the president's poor performance to go around battering vulnerable Democrats. So what's the Republican strategy here?
Well, I think Trump's strategy, first of all, you want to talk about the heat. The heat is on Joe Biden right now because immediately after the debate, you had NBC, Chuck Todd and Kirsten Welker basically saying that was it. They couldn't see this man, Joe Biden, as the 2024 nominee beating Trump. Immediately after that, CNN, which hosted the debate, had Van Jones, had David Axelrod. My point, suggesting Joe Biden drop out as well. Van Jones was in tears saying, I love the man, but he's got to leave. My point is the media left Joe Biden immediately after the debate. And here's how politics works in America, like it or not. The other two gentlemen may disagree with me, but I've been doing this a really long time. When Joe Biden had the media supporting him, everyone was kind of okay on the left with it. When the media backed off the night of the debate and continues to, we saw the New York Times the day after the debate or 48 hours after the debate saying it's time for Joe to move on if they really want to win the election. Media left. The donor class held their breath and did for the past couple of days. But the problem is, sure, elected officials are going to get behind Joe, even though there's 25 elected officials in the House right now saying time for him to go. But when the media leaves, the donor class is waiting, and I think there were a lot of meetings over the last 48 hours with the donor class. I think they're very nervous. When they drop, and they are dropping, and they will drop. Joe's done. He's done. I don't care what he says. If Karine Jean-Pierre says it's Joe all the way till the end, he may be saying that right now because they still need those donor classes to hang on for dear life. And believe him, it's over, guys. It's over. If Joe Biden's the nominee, Trump wins maybe 45 states. If he's not, the only shot the Democrats have right now can't be Barack Obama, but you were close, Joel. You were close. The most popular Democrat that can still run is Michelle Obama. And I think that's the only hope we have right now.
Can I just
very quickly? Yes, go ahead.
Very quickly. just it's very important to note the grassroots donors came in strong for Joe Biden after that debate.
Yeah.
Record-setting numbers for him. He outraised former President Trump by a significant number, almost 2-to-1 immediately after the debate.
Okay.
These numbers matter. Your point is fair about the donor class, except for the fact that the data is opposite what you're saying.
Right. Okay. Okay. I got to get to John Fishwick. John, there was something of a bombshell ruling by the United States Supreme Court, which said presidents do enjoy some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts while they are in office. That appeal was brought by former President Trump, who's facing a number of prosecutions. Firstly, as a matter of the law, what did you make of that ruling?
And I think it's a landmark decision based on, what can the president be prosecuted for in our country. And the Supreme Court set up kind of a sliding scale. If it's something that's based on his constitutional power, he's going to have absolute immunity. If it's something that's on the outer perimeter of what he does, he's going to be presumed to be immune. And immunity means you can't be prosecuted. And then there's the third category, which is unofficial acts or private acts. The Supreme Court didn't really define that except to say you can't be prosecuted for that. So the decision wasn't that inconsistent with the oral argument. However, the one blow to Jack Smith is if something is found by a judge to be immune where it is an official act, Jack Smith can't even use that in his case. He can't even have it in the indictment. And typically in a criminal case, you can use what are called prior bad acts in a case. They can't use them against this president or against future presidents. So it's harder to prosecute a president. It's somewhat consistent with the oral arguments in the case, but I would say it's a little more pro-president than when it was in the oral arguments.
John, shortly after that ruling was handed down by the Supreme Court, President Biden responded to it. This is what he had to say.
This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do.
So, John, does President Biden have a point there?
Well, there's certainly been a lot of talk by him and by the dissent in this case. I think, though, there is some limit on what presidents can do, and we're about to find out what those limits are. Judge Chutkan is going to have hearings in this case where she's going to have to make some decisions. Are the acts that the former president committed, are they official acts, which he has immunity? Are they private acts? I think where the rubber's going to hit the road in the January 6th prosecution is going to be, what does Judge Chutkan say about the elector slates that the former president put up? Are those private acts for which he can be prosecuted, or are those public acts, official acts that he can't be prosecuted? I understand the frustration from the defense. This is a pro-president decision, but nonetheless, there are certain acts that a president can be prosecuted for. We just don't know what they are yet until Judge Chutkan, and that's Judge Bershaw in New York. He's going to have to look at this. His case is in an unusual position because he's had a jury trial and then this decision has come down. He wisely has delayed the sentencing, but I think these issues are going to play out in our courts. It means no trial against former President Trump in 2024, but these issues are going to percolate along in our trial courts.
All right, Joseph Williams, what do you make of that ruling by the Supreme Court? I mean, how will that ruling affect President Trump is facing multiple charges in a number of cases. His view is that, well, should all be thrown out now.
Well, I think that's going to be tested. And the problem that we're facing here is not just the fact that we're in uncharted waters. You have an individual judge who's going to decide what's legal and what wasn't, what was an official act and what wasn't. You're also going to have that decision alone is going to be appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. Right. So even though they put guardrails around this, the guardrails are going to be essentially be defined by them. And they've already shown that they have a very expansive view of presidential power. And I think that these convictions, the New York case is going to be really, really tricky, really interesting to see what happens there. But I think it's going to make it a non-issue in the presidential campaign. And even if it is a non-issue, I think there's enough bluster and enough bravado Trump will receive as a result of these rulings that he's going to spin it to his advantage. I don't think that there's going to be anybody anywhere at any time where Trump is going to acknowledge that there was something done wrong. I think he's going to say that this was a Supreme Court justifying his opinion, justifying his view of the law, and a large portion of people are going to believe it, mainly because they aren't into the weeds like we are, and that they really don't understand the intricacies of how this works. Trump is going to say it. People are going to remember something about the Supreme Court doing something in Trump's favor, and oh yeah, he must be right, because that's the last thing that I remember hearing. So for a low or medium information voter, I think it's going to be a non-issue. But for the talking heads and the chattering class, it's going to be something that's going to be parsed and nicked and divided for time immemorial, I think.
Eric Bolling, I mean, there are widely divergent views on this ruling, depending on which side of the political divide one is. Former President Trump, for one, said that this was a victory for democracy, but there are many others who say it actually undermines democracy.
I think we have to be. I think let me just jump on what I believe it was Joe who just said, that the low information voter, this looks like a win for Trump, but the smarter people in the room know it's not. I'm gonna take a different angle to this. I think the vast majority of Americans are interested in fair play, whether you like Trump or Biden, whether you're conservative or liberal, whether you're gay, straight. You watch a sporting event and you want the referee to be impartial. You want the referee to be fair. And right or wrong, the perception is what they're doing to Trump with these cases has been the abuse of the lawfare, of the jurisprudence in America to go after a political opponent. Whether you like it or not, this is the general belief. High information voter, low information voter, doesn't matter. So when Judge Merchant comes down on September 6th and says, Trump, you got house arrest, Trump, you're on probation, or Trump, you go to jail, it will be a win for Trump no matter what, because the Democrats missed this. They thought getting Trump behind bars, or getting Trump as a convicted felon, was going to be enough to undermine his candidacy. He gets convicted of a felony, and he just today, 3 hours ago, the New York Times recent poll has Trump widening his lead against Biden. So all this machination of the Democrats thinking getting Trump in legal trouble was going to work.
Right, but from what you said there, Eric, I mean, there's a presumption there that all these cases were politically motivated.
Yes, there is, and it's seen that way. I mean, look what happened. Fannie Willis in Georgia has been suspended right now. That whole trial is on hold. The federal case in Jack Smith's case regarding January 6th has been pushed back, has been delayed. Alvin Bragg's case in New York is under intense scrutiny. Honestly, the best thing that could happen to Trump is if they convict him to prison time at Rikers. He will win the presidency with that.
Joel, what is your view on this? Because there is one other criticism we are hearing, and that is that the United States Supreme Court has become political, is now politicized.
As you say in Casablanca in the movie, I'm shocked that there's politics here in Washington. I got to give it to Eric. I'm impressed at how powerfully the Republicans can coalesce around a convicted criminal, while we Democrats are shooting ourselves in the foot about a 90-minute debate performance that was no good. But I digress.
He's widened his lead across all political persuasion.
I just want to get to the core concern here, which is that apparently now the Supreme Court is a 6-3 court, sort of a supermajority conservative court. Maybe they're allowing the floodgates to open now for Joe Biden to tell his attorney general to halt the upcoming election and stay in power, right? I mean, that's essentially what they're saying and what they're corroborating. It's not a get Trump dynamic in American courts and jurisprudence. Trump committed crimes and he's been prosecuted for them. And if he's not guilty, then he will be seen as not guilty. That's how the law works. But he has the Supreme Court now giving every possible bending over backwards rationale to get him some freedom of movement. And now the President of the United States can make an official act of talking to the Attorney General to stop an election, or calling on SEAL Team 6 to go after his political opponents. And apparently that's fair game, and that's very dangerous.
That's been shot down by Roberts.
Okay,
John.
John Fishwick, I mean, this Supreme Court ruling has already had an effect on the New York case, the case that has become known as the hush money case. The judge there has postponed sentencing to September September. He now says he will have to consider a challenge, and that challenge stems directly from that Supreme Court ruling. So what do you make of it?
Well, just to follow up on what you and the panelists have been saying, all the Trump cases put a tremendous stress test on our legal system. How's it holding up? I mean, that'll be for the public to decide. I'd give our legal system kind of a B or B minus. I do think it's important for the public that all of these proceedings are viewed as fair. Sometimes I think it just depends where you lie on the political spectrum. If you're for Trump, you think he's being railroaded, and if you think you're against Trump, then you think, it's not fair that all 4 of these trials haven't gone forward this year. So I think in the hush money case, it's an odd status right now. The jury trial has happened, and now the Supreme Court has come down with this landmark decision. There are a couple of parts of that case. One, when the president spoke to Hope Hicks, and when he used Twitter to make certain pronouncements while he was president. I think the Trump legal team is going to say, hey, look, that's all official. That's within the outer limits of his presidency. They shouldn't have used that evidence. Now that we've got this Supreme Court case, we want a new trial. I think the Bragg legal team is going to say, look, that was all private stuff. This is all connected to payoffs and to you as a candidate, not you as president. And so that's going to be a decision that Judge Merchan, the trial judge, is going to have to make. He's going to have to look at that probably sometime in August because he set the sentencing for September 18th. So everything is upside down with this new decision. It's a landmark decision. All the trial judges have to decide it and come up with a game plan to decide what's official and what's private.
Eric, getting back to what's going on in the Trump campaign, some analysts are speculating that because of Biden's debate performance, this has now given the Trump campaign a bit more time to consider the running mate, a vice presidential candidate. I mean, how far are we away from that announcement?
I would say and I talk to them daily. I spoke to not Trump specifically daily, but the very inner circle, the people who whisper into his ear, and they literally tell me they don't know. Like they believe he's picked who he wants, but they don't know because he won't reveal that. If I were him, based on the debate and based on the polling, again, New York Times showed the widening lead. He's leading in all the swing states. I think you wait. There's no reason to make to announce a decision. Personally, I think he's going to go with someone no one's talking about. I think he'll pick Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sarah Sanders has been an absolute stalwart for Donald Trump. And what she does that Trump needs and wants, she stays in the background. She's a force. She's a barracuda. What she does is she's not front and center. Trump needs the spotlight. He needs the stage. And she's smart. She's very, very smart, very witty, and she's got an attack that you don't see coming. And I think that is the one he will pick. It's a female. Doesn't need any of he doesn't really need any of the states of the other people that they're talking about, because he's pretty solid in most of the other states.
And Joel, I'm going to ask you to jump ahead of events now. And, with all this chatter we're hearing in Washington, all the speculation, there's also speculation about, well, if President Biden decides he's not going to be running, who would replace him? A CNN poll showed that Vice President Kamala Harris is a point away from beating Donald Trump, if that is the matchup. How do you see it?
Yeah, at the risk of sounding bureaucratic, there's a technical reason for why, if President Biden were to elect to leave, that it would go to Vice President Harris. And that's because those are the two people on the ticket. They're the ones that have been raising the money jointly. They're the ones that won the primary. She has a mandate right now. And so that's strong. And then if you look at the alternative, which is to move her out of the picture, that would have a cataclysmic impact, I believe, on a core constituency of the Democratic Party, which is Black women. That doesn't mean they are always in favor of her, but to take her off the ticket in favor of a white man, for example, would be disastrous. So, this is why we have vice presidents. The Trump decision on who he picks is an important decision because the future of the country depends on it. He's 78 too. He doesn't look spry. So, if Kamala Harris is the person next, then she should be the one who gets the nod. Anything other than that would be a backroom party poobah decision rather than the will of the people. But all that said, I do think Joe Biden's going to stay on this ticket, as he should.
Right. Eric Bolling, what about that point that Joel made about the fact that Trump is not a youngster either, and there have also been some questions raised about his mental ability.
Allow me to just pick up where what Joel didn't say very eloquently, he said, but what he didn't say is the reason why Kamala Harris would be the odds-on favorite is because the money that they've raised with her on the ticket wouldn't be able to be transferred to anyone else other than Kamala Harris.
Thank you.
You have to start new fundraising. So she would be. However, Michelle Obama, a black woman who is clearly capable of raising a ton of money, would be the one to pick. Gavin Newsom would fall flat. He'd get crushed. And anyone else they're talking about, down to Kamala Harris or Michelle Obama. And as far as Trump's age, I mean, that whole back and forth with golf was very comical during the debate, but it was telling. Trump will play a round of golf. He hits a golf ball. He hits it 250 yards, 300 yards. He's a young 78. Joe's an old 81.
Joseph Williams, talking about the different groups that would make up a winning coalition in this election. Joel mentioned black women, but talk about African Americans in general. I mean, Biden has overwhelming support from African Americans in this election. He did in 2020. In fact, many consider his victory due to the support he got from African Americans. But that is now changing. He is losing support among black voters who are shifting their support in limited numbers to Donald Trump. Why is that happening, and how does Biden fix it?
Well, I'd say the operative phrase is in limited number. There's no evidence of a wholesale shift, but enough around the margins could be enough to make a difference. The problem with Biden and black voters is the fact that we haven't seen a whole lot of results based on what his promises are, or he hasn't made a strong enough case to black voters as to why he deserves another 4 years. And that case took a serious hit in that debate on Thursday. The second problem that he's having with black voters is outreach. There hasn't been a ton of it from the president, mainly because they've been trying to keep his energy focused, trying to not tax him too much, I believe, which feeds into the previous part of the problem. The fact that he is not looking his best, and that at 4 years into the presidency, he's clearly not the man he used to be in 2020. Does that mean he can no longer do the job? Does that also mean that he can no longer reach out to black voters? No, the answer to both those questions. There is enough time. There is a lot of time. It has to happen, and it has to happen immediately.
Okay, and that is where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C.